In an industry where we are surrounded by more and more games every year, we often find ourselves asking the same question. Out of all these countless games, which one is actually the best? And we ask ourselves this because we no longer settle for a 6 out of 10 game or even a 7 out of 10 game. We simply want the absolute best of the best. Even though a game rated 6 out of 10 could potentially be a 9 out of 10 for you, you will still blindly trust user reviews and gaming journalists, although hopefully not so much after this one anymore, without even looking beyond the score itself. So today, I would like to cut ties and distance myself from this particular breed of self-proclaimed gamers who only look at someone else's opinion before activating their own, once again self-proclaimed free will. How am I going to do that? Simple. I am going to ignore user reviews and gaming journalists and follow my instincts instead. Ever since I was a kid, I've been a huge fan of shooters. Yeah, I know it's the most basic and stereotypically masculine genre imaginable, but I enjoy it. So against all odds, I am going to blindly try what Steam users consider to be the worst shooter on the entire platform. And if you really think about it, being considered the worst shooter is actually incredibly difficult. There are thousands and thousands of shooters on Steam. Like, this game could generally be a strong contender for a worst game of the year award, if such a thing existed, of course. And besides, considering that the core essence of a shooter is simply shooting and killing people, I don't believe a game that doesn't even look that bad could possibly perform that task so horrendously that it turns the title of the worst shooter in all of Steam. So without further ado, let's jump into the game. Before I show you what the game is actually like, I would like to point out that this appears to be yet another case of abandoned early access. As we can see on Steam, the game hasn't received an update in 18 months, and even so, I am willing to trust that despite its current state, it might still surprise us. As soon as I launched the game, I was immediately overwhelmed by an absurd amount of information, words, and colors. Honestly, it was a bit shocking at first. Then there are these damn text boxes packed with explanations for every single menu option, but obviously that's still not enough of a reason to dismiss the game and leave a negative review, right? Also, I don't know if it's because I suffer from an advanced stage of brain damage, but there doesn't seem to be a clear play button leading to what would be the main game mode. So I guess I'll just have to click around random modes and pray that at least one human player still exists in any of them. However, I had to abandon the idea of finding another human player pretty quickly after checking the game's Steam player count and realizing that only 2 people were playing. And considering that I am one of those 2 people, that means I can only possibly run into one other person, assuming this human being is even playing on the same server as me, which is another unlikely scenario altogether. But as the saying goes, hope dies last, right? The game was also bombarding me with information about the statistics, workshop content, and add-ons that, quite honestly, I couldn't care less about. I was only interested in experiencing the most basic and fundamental aspect of a shooter. What does it feel like to kill people? When I clicked the first random play button I could find, the game threw me into a tutorial, and 2 things immediately caught my attention. The first was the unbelievably awful and unbearable voice acting, with all due respect and love to the voice actors behind it.
Patrol mode lets mech pilots explore and gain experience, money, and resources.
And the second thing was, why am I experiencing stuttering and frame drops in a game that shouldn't even remotely be difficult to run? And it's not like the game looks better than Cyberpunk 2077 running ultra ray tracing or anything. In fact, I have a feeling that fucking Black Ops 2, a game that came out 14 years ago, looks better than this thing. But hey, I suppose rendering a PNG of a generic planet must require an enormous amount of graphical horsepower, right? I even tried pressing escape to change some settings or do literally anything that might improve the performance, but for reasons that remain unknown to me to this very day, pressing escape simply did nothing. So I had to dig deep and rely on pure resilience, and during the rest of the match with constant stuttering and FPS drops, while holding onto a small but powerful source of hope that could eventually prove this game couldn't possibly be as bad as everyone claimed it was. But this is where I have to become critical of the game for the first time. The moment my first combat encounter arrived. I know it's a bot, I know it's a tutorial, but as someone who's spent basically 20 years of his life playing shooters, I feel obligated to say that I felt absolutely nothing while shooting at the enemies. No satisfaction, no impact. When my bullets and missiles hit the enemy, it genuinely felt like I was shooting at a wall. There were no visible hit effects, no feedback, no sense that my attacks were actually connecting. The only way I could tell that I was damaging the enemy was by looking at the damage numbers appearing on the left side of the screen. I was really hoping this would be the moment where the game finally clicked and delivered something wasn't exciting, but instead it left me with a slightly bitter taste in my mouth. That being said, the explosion effects from the mechs aren't actually that bad. Oh, and by the way, after spending 15 minutes inside the tutorial with absolutely no idea what I was supposed to do and shooting at basically everything I could see, I finally realized I had to press X to check my current objective. But that's not the game's fault, I'm just unbelievably stupid. On my way to that objective, I ran into human enemies. By human, I mean the NPCs were human beings, not that they were controlled by actual players. And during these fights, something interesting happened. Sometimes when I fired my weapon, it would produce sound effects, other times, complete silence. But I'm going to assume this mech comes equipped with some revolutionary automatic stealth technology that disables weapon audio halfway through a magazine for the sole purpose of confusing the enemy. Truly a masterpiece of 21st century military engineering. As for the highly anticipated mission I was tasked with completing, I have a strong feeling the developers took inspiration from one of the companies best known for creating the most dynamic and engaging missions in gaming history, Ubisoft. Because the mission consisted of escorting a vehicle while walking behind it and doing absolutely nothing else for 15 minutes, a true revolution in game design. Right before starting the next mission, I had to go to the bathroom for a minute, and when I came back, this was on my screen. What the hell could have possibly happened in 30 seconds? After returning to the menu and repairing my mech, I realized that I wasn't limited to PvE matchmaking. I also had the option to the queue for the PvPvE, which meant I finally had a chance of encountering that one other human being who was supposedly still playing the game. Without a shred of fear, I queued up and nothing happened. I didn't find the other human. And to make things even better, I no longer had any missions or objectives on my screen either. So at that point, I considered my experience with the game effectively finished. Sure, I didn't spend time focusing on the resource looting mechanics and it didn't dive deep into the lore or the universe surrounding the game. But let's be honest please, it's a shooter. If the core mechanic, shooting people, is not interesting, why would I care about the secondary systems? Also keep in mind that when I wanted to leave the game, I couldn't simply quit through the menu because, as I mentioned earlier, the escape key doesn't work during a match, so Alt F4. Despite my original intentions, which were genuinely filled with love, optimism, and faith in Hawken Reborn, I now feel morally obligated to leave a review so that not a single additional person wastes their precious time on this game. I try to love this game with every fiber of my soul, with a devotion bordering of the sacred. Yet fate, ever cruel and draped in misfortune, conspired against me. It seemed as though Providence itself had turned its gaze elsewhere, abandoning me to wander a barren wasteland of disappointment. Thus, what should have blossomed into a profound affection was doomed from the very beginning, condemned by the heavens to remain forever beyond my reach. Do you recommend this game? No. Thank you guys for watching the video.